September is over and I have some stuff to share with you. So here are the books, movies, TV, and music I got to this month. Okay, let's do it. I started off the month by finishing The Marvels by Brian Selznick. I've mentioned before in my other videos that I love Brian Selznick's work, and this book was no different. The Marvels contains two stories that are intertwined with each other, one told through drawings, the other through traditional narrative. One of them starts in 1776 and follows a young boy named Billy Marvel, the sole survivor of a shipwreck who then goes on to head one of the most celebrated families in theater. The second story takes place in the 90s and follows a boy named Joseph Jarvis, who has run away from his boarding school to find his estranged uncle, Albert Nightingale, and the two stories are connected in very strange, interesting ways. I've read this book once before, but it was years ago, so I didn't remember much that happened, but man, is this story great. It has a huge emphasis on family, and we all know how much I love family-oriented stories. This book doesn't hit the same way Hugo Cabret does, probably because Hugo was the first Selznick I ever read, and the one I've read the most. I've basically grown up with that book, so it hits really hard in a very specific, heartwarming way. Still, The Marvels is fantastic. The way Brian Selznick crafts his stories is wonderful, and his mysteries are always so fun to watch unfold. Even though they're kid stories, they feel timeless, and I think anyone could pick up any of his books and thoroughly enjoy them. 5 stars. Next, I read 2 of the Avatar graphic novels, The Lost Adventures and The Promise. Seriously, Avatar is living rent-free in my head right now, and I'm not even mad about it, because it's fantastic, and the graphic novels are great extensions of the show. The Lost Adventures are a collection of little events that happened to Team Avatar throughout the course of the original show, but we just never saw them because the cameras were, quote-unquote, not rolling. I enjoyed this collection. I thought it captured the tone of the original series really well, as in everything that happened in it I could actually imagine happening in the show. My favorites were definitely Zuko and May's first date, Aang trying to talk to Katara about their little moment before the invasion, and Bumi and Toph's earthbending battle. Overall, they were sweet little bonus stories that I had fun time with. 3 stars. The Promise exceeded my expectations, which makes sense since it's Avatar. This graphic novel follows the gang about a year after the war ended, as Aang, the Earth King, and Fire Lord Zuko, are trying to clear up the trauma of the war and restore peace, namely by freeing the Fire Nation colonies and bringing Fire Nation citizens back home. But things are complicated, especially since some Fire Nation citizens are loyal to Ozai and don't want Zuko as their Fire Lord, and some colonies are more deeply ingrained into the Earth Kingdom culture than they'd previously anticipated. I thought this was a fantastic look at the aftermath of war, especially one that's been raging for 100 years. I feel like in a lot of fantasy series, the good guys defeat the bad guys, and it's implied that everything is going to return to normal, but in reality that's not the case. Ending one conflict does not automatically mean that everything's going to be okay. More realistically, you end one conflict and 2 more pop up in its place, and I am just astounded that a kids franchise is not only acknowledging the complexities of that, but exploring it and showing us the fallout of ending a conflict when a lot of young adult and hey, maybe even adult fantasy franchises don't. The world is complex, politics are complex, and it's so interesting to see that shown in Avatar. On top of that, we get to hang out with the entire gang, which is always great. I also think it does a great job of showing the lingering trauma Zuko has, how even after he's won against his father, he's still being manipulated by him, and again, it shows how things like childhood trauma and abuse are incredibly difficult to overcome. They're not just solved overnight. Man, there is so much that this franchise does right. I could talk about it all day. The next one is called The Search, and I'm really excited for it. The Promise gets 4 stars. I started off the month with a Toy Story marathon. I've seen the first 3 so many times I can't even count, but this was my first time seeing the 4th one. The first 3 were obviously amazing, they're some of my favorite movies ever, and the 3rd one is some god-tier stuff, and don't you ever forget it. The 4th one was really good. I liked it, just not as much as the first 3. Like I said in my Letterboxd review, which you can follow me on Letterboxd if you want to see what I'm watching and how I felt about it before these videos, but maybe it's because the 3rd one wrapped up the trilogy so perfectly, but the 4th one sort of feels separate from the rest. I had a lot of fun with it, but the ending, I don't know, I had some mixed thoughts. I did cry like a baby at the end, but also, I don't know. Of course, I bawled at the end of the 3rd one too. Frankly, if you don't bawl at that, then I think you may be a robot and you should get that looked at. In fact, I tear up at least once during each of these movies. It's a genuine problem. This series has just a special place in my heart, and I will continue watching and rewatching them until I die. The original trilogy gets 5 stars, the 4th one gets 4. I didn't expect Captain Fantastic to hit me in the feels as much as it did, which I think is the general consensus for this movie. Again, this is a story about family, which is already a drawing factor for me, but this was truly heartwarming. It was both beautiful and painful because you feel for every character. You understand where the father is coming from, but also where the wife's parents are coming from, and where the kids themselves are coming from. And you can tell the father genuinely loves his kids deeply, but you also know that the kids shouldn't be living the way they are. Viggo Mortensen was great. I also loved George Mackay, and I want to see more things that he's been in. 4 stars. Mulan 2020 was a big meh for me. I've only seen the original Mulan once, when I was like 6, so there's a lot that I don't remember, which I think actually helped me stomach the remake. The filmmaking itself wasn't terrible. I thought it was actually pretty competent, and there were some shots that I genuinely really liked. Overall though, I feel it lacked emotion, and all the themes were watered down and soggy, which seems to be a trend with these live-action remakes. I'm not the biggest fan of Mulan having this super powerful chi, which makes her a naturally gifted warrior. I feel like that undermines the entire feminist message of the original, which is that girls can do the same things as guys as long as we work for it like they do. Nobody is magically amazing at everything. If everyone works hard, girl, guy, or whoever else, we can all do the same things. Another thing about the original Mulan is that she has to use her own strengths to be able to get out of situations, and we just don't see that in this one. The remake kind of just makes her into a superhero who's like super powerful. Also, there's other controversies surrounding this movie which I had no idea about before I watched it, so I just like to not think about it anymore. I'm glad that I personally didn't pay for it, but yeah, you might want to look into some of those controversies before deciding if you want to pay for this movie. 2 stars. I rewatched La La Land this month. La La Land is one of my favorite films ever, and I was really needing a comfort film, so I watched this with my friend, and of course I loved it. I'm not going to talk too much about this because I love it. Like, I don't know what else to say. Of course, it gets 5 out of 5 stars. First Cow might just be my favorite film of the year so far. It's a beautiful story about 2 friends who start selling baked cakes using stolen milk from their chief's prized cow, and if that isn't the best description for a movie you've ever heard, then I don't know what is. The cinematography in this is chef's kiss. It has a very slow, lingering style that lets you soak in these characters, their environment, and the moments they share together. It is so wholesome, but also a little nefarious because of the stolen milk, which I never thought could be a good combination, and yet here we are. Every frame is gorgeous. It highlights domestic life, friendship, and even the futility of trying to achieve the American dream, which, yeah, it's a little depressing, but it's honest. And I think that's a great way to describe this movie. Honest. There is something so real and present about it. It feels like you're watching these friends and the people around them simply living their lives from one day to another, trying to make the best of the cards they've been dealt. I kind of want to rewatch this pretty soon because I feel like I like it even more on a second watch. Also, the cow in this is maybe the most beautiful baby I've ever seen, and she deserves the world. 4.5 stars. I finished the month off with Zodiac, which was amazing. If you know me, then you know that I unfortunately have a fascination for true crime, which has made me very paranoid, but will that stop me from watching movies like this? Absolutely not. The Zodiac is one of the most interesting unsolved mysteries to me, and I think this movie told the story fantastically. This case is very big and very convoluted. There were a lot of people involved, all scattered in different cities across a number of years, so I applaud the movie for being able to bring everything together and tell the story in a way that was cohesive. Everyone in this is top-notch, and on top of that, David Fincher is great, but we already knew that. He's able to create such tangible atmospheres and vivid worlds. I always get sucked into everything I've seen of his. While this movie is horrifying, it's also hilarious at times. I was surprised by how many times I burst out laughing in this crime thriller, but this screenplay, these actors, and Fincher made it work perfectly. I loved it. I gave it 4.5 stars, but I might bump that up to a 5. I finished rewatching Avatar: The Last Airbender. Man, this show is all I've talked about for the last few months, so I'm not going to get into it for this video. If you want to hear my more in-depth thoughts, you can check out my last 2 That's a Wrap videos. I also made a video ripping the movie apart and another video rewriting the movie, so if you're a huge Avatar fan like me, you can check those out too. They'll all be in the description. Just know that I loved this series just as much the second time around as I did the first. Seriously, this show is fantastic. If you haven't seen it yet, please do. The entire show gets 5 stars. I randomly started watching History 101. It's a series on Netflix in which each episode goes over the history of a certain topic, things like fast food, plastics, robots, and more. I like history, so this was something that was super easy to listen to while I was doing my nails or prepping my bullet journal. I found that I enjoyed the historical sections of the episodes more than when they started getting into the modern day. For example, I thought it was super interesting to learn about how fast food started up in the early 1900s and spread throughout the world, but I didn't have as much interest when we got into the 2000s and they started talking about the health issues surrounding it. And I think that's the case because for episodes like fast food and plastics, the stuff the show covered about the modern day was stuff that we learned pretty heavily in school already, so I just wasn't as intrigued because I already had the base knowledge of that. But anyway, my favorite episodes were the space race, the rise of China, oil in the Middle East, feminism, and AIDS. As for whether or not I recommend this, I think if you're already fascinated by history and you find some of the topics I mentioned to be interesting, then yeah, give it a go. Like I mentioned, it's not something you have to give 100% of your attention to, so you can have it on in the background, like while you're, I don't know, scrubbing your walls. I don't know what to do in your free time. You know, go scrub your walls. I think we can all use a good wall scrubbing once in a while. I give it 3 stars. Lastly, I started watching The Legend of Korra, and I don't have much to say about it at the moment because I've only seen the first 3 episodes, but I'm instantly intrigued. It's looking like there's going to be more political strife in this one, which I'm here for. As if real politics weren't insane enough, I might as well get invested into fake ones as well. Hopefully I can get more into the show in October, so stick around to find out what I think about it. Sonlux released their album Tomorrow's Eye, or Tomorrow's One. I'm gonna call it Tomorrow's Eye. I actually didn't even know this album was coming out until I saw an ad for it on Instagram, and I went, I should go check that out, and it did not disappoint. I will say I don't love it as much as Brighter Wounds, which was their last album. That album is fantastic, maybe my favorite album they've ever put out, but Tomorrow's Eye is very good. It's so weird and experimental, which is on brand for Sonlux. I swear half the time I have no idea what he's even singing about, and that's okay, because the music itself is something to behold. Sonlux takes melodies and harmonies and instruments and rhythms that should not work together, but then they smash them together with some witch magic, and it's the most beautiful thing. This album had some great instrumentals on it as well as songs with vocals, which I really enjoyed. I do wish there was more though, just because I love the stuff they put out so much, and I'm greedy. My favorites are Plans We Made, Only, Honesty, Last Light, Undertow, and Involution. Overall, great album, 4.5 stars. Bastille released Survivin', which is honestly a 2020 mood. I feel like this song is a combination of their older and newer styles, and I think it works really well. And it hits me especially hard because I've loved them all the way from the All This Bad Blood days, so the older influence grips my heart, but it also has some of their newer feel to keep it spicy. It talks about hard stuff while sounding sweet and happy-go-lucky, so it's very Bastille. It makes me feel all warm and fuzzy-like. The best way I can describe it is that I could see it as the song that plays during the credits of a coming-of-age movie, which means I really like it. They've been putting out more music lately, so I'm hoping this leads to an album. I guess time will tell. 4 stars. As always, I'll leave links to the music I spoke about in the description below if you want to go check it out. And there you have it! Those were the books, movies, TV, and music I got to this month. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, comment down below some stuff you loved this month, and if you have any recommendations for me, drop those too. If you like this sort of content and you want to see more of it from me, make sure to hit the subscribe button because I make videos every Friday. Also, I'm on platforms, so if you want to follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Goodreads, and Letterboxd, those links will be in the description down below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.